Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Hello everybody and welcome back to The Sound of Fear, the show where we break down the sounds that make your blood run cold. It's our job to find out which songs bring the fear and which songs fall flat. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the greatest zombie movie of the 21st century, that being the British film starring Cillian Murphy, 28 Days Later.
Hey, where the hell is everybody?
The amazing soundtrack of this movie was composed primarily by John Murphy, who has worked on lots of projects since, including last year's Superman. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. The film starts and we are greeted with riots and revolutions, all being played on TVs for a chimpanzee. For a little background, this is an animal testing facility, and specifically, these chimpanzees are being exposed to extreme graphic violence in an effort to find a cure for rage. Now obviously nobody likes animal testing, some more than others. As the animal rights activists enter the lab, we get our first track of the film titled, The Beginning. The chimpanzees are covered in wounds and seem extremely aggressive. I would be too if I was locked up and forced to watch the plights of the world 24/7. Just as they're about to open the cages, one of the activists noticed a scientist and grabs him just before he's able to call security. The scientist tells them that the chimps are infected. Infected with what, they ask? Rage. And this rage transfers through blood and saliva. Obviously, the activists don't listen to him and decide to let them out anyway. And as they do, we get our next track titled Rage. Props to the scientist for his reaction time, as when he sees the girl gets infected, he immediately moves to, "We have to kill her." Sadly, he isn't able to follow through with it, but I mean, can you really blame him? We jump 28 days later, and we see Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, in a hospital room, still connected to an IV, fluids, and everything. Looking out into the hallway, it's a mess. Obviously something terrible has happened, but Jim has no idea. Luckily, someone slid the key under the door, so Jim is able to unlock it and head out into the hospital. The hospital is completely empty, and the phones don't work either. It's eerily silent. No background noises, no music, just Jim's voice calling out for anybody. Jim grabs some Pepsis and Mountain Dews from a broken Pepsi machine and heads his way out into the streets of London. If you haven't noticed by now, the film quality is not of what we'd be used to for a film released in 2002. The bad film quality was actually a stylistic choice by director Danny Boyle. He wanted the world to look more gritty and uninhabitable. The bad video quality was also extremely helpful with these wide shots of downtown London, as a lower quality would help cover up small mistakes they made, as these shots were very hard to do. The production did not have the money to completely block off sections of London, so what they had to do was film these shots extremely early in the morning before most traffic started. And they would even have to beg pedestrians to wait a few minutes to walk down the road so they could get a shot. This movie is extremely inspiring to new filmmakers, and if you've ever wanted to make a movie on a low budget, then I definitely recommend watching this one. Cue the silence is deafening cliche, but the wide shots of London completely dead are some of my personal favorite of any movie I've ever seen. For the first time in the movie, we see the back of Jim's head and a giant scar, which is probably the reason why he was in the hospital in the first place. Jim walks for what seems like hours and not seeing another soul. He finds money on the ground and immediately starts stuffing it into his bag, as if it matters anymore. Opening a car door, Jim sets off the alarm as our next track, Godspeed You, Black Emperor, reaches its climax. Despite the climactic music and the car alarm going off, nothing happens. Jim continues to wander, finding more clues along the way until he stops at a church. Looking down from the balcony, Jim sees the chapel filled with dead bodies. Completely stunned, he lets out a shaky, "Hello?" Immediately, two people get up and snap their heads in his direction. Jim somehow ignores this and notices a banging coming from a door up on the balcony. He goes to check it out with our next track titled The Church. The pastor finally breaks down the door, convulsing and growling as he starts towards Jim. Jim smacks the pastor in the head with a bag of Pepsi cans and runs out of the church. His escape wakes up more of the infected in the chapel, and they chase him out into the street with the track Godspeed You, Black Emperor playing again. Just before the infected are able to catch up with Jim, a pair of survivors come to his aid and cover his track with Molotov cocktails, sealing the deal by blowing up the gas station before they escape. The gas station explosion scene is so cool. They show like a dozen different angles. It's so fire. The two survivors take Jim back to their home, which turns out just to be a locked up convenience store and a subway station. This is Selena and Mark, a couple of strangers who teamed up when the apocalypse started. They ask Jim what he can remember, and he tells them he was a delivery man who was riding his bike when a car hit him, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in the hospital, and now here he is. Selena and Mark explain the grim circumstances of the world, how fast the virus spread, and how before the news stopped, they had heard of infections in New York and Paris. Jim asks them about their families, to which they say their families are dead, and that his is also dead. Pretty uplifting, guys. Jim refuses to believe that his parents are dead, so Mark and Selena agree to take Jim to his parents' house in the morning. The next morning arrives and the three start their walk to the suburbs, arriving at Jim's parents' house. Walking into his parents' bedroom, we have our next track titled Jim's Parents.
Abide with me, fast falls the eventide.
Despite how sad this scene is, it's honestly the best way you can go out in an apocalypse like this. Selena tells Jim that he should be grateful that this is how they died. Mark then tells the story of how his family died and how terrible it was, and that Jim should be grateful that his parents didn't have to suffer. Selena decides that it's too late to make it back to the shop before night, so the three decide to make camp in the house until morning. That night, unable to sleep, Jim lights a camera and looks at the pictures of his parents on the fridge, remembering all the good times. We get to see a home video style segment of Jim and his parents in their kitchen back when the world was normal. Outside the house, something notices Jim's candle. Before he can react, two infected charge through the windows of the kitchen and tackle him. Mark comes to help with Selena not far behind him, and they make quick work of the infected. Selena grills Jim about whether or not he was bit, but all Jim could think about is how they just killed the neighbors who he knew when they were alive. Selena turns to Mark, who is desperately rubbing off a cut on his arm. He begs her to wait, but Selena attacks and kills Mark without a second thought. I have my problems with this scene because I honestly think that Mark could have not been infected here. Obviously, the infection is extremely transferable, right? But it usually reacts almost instantly, and in every other case we see in the movie, the infection is visible in the person within that time that Mark had that cut. I understand Selena's extremely cautious nature and to make sure he doesn't turn, but at least give the guy a few seconds to see if it's actually gonna happen or not, you know what I mean? Jim and Selena leave the house as more infected always follow an attack. While walking, Jim asks how Selena knew that Mark was infected, to which she responds, she didn't. She could see it in his eyes. I don't know, man. I think she's kind of dumb for that one. I can't lie. We also get this very important quote.
And just so you know where you stand, if it happens to you, I'll do it in a heartbeat.
Jim stops Selena and points up to an apartment building where one of the apartments has Christmas lights getting turned on and off. So the two go to check it out. The staircase is completely filled with shopping carts built as a barricade. Selena checks for infected, and then the two start climbing. About halfway up, Jim makes them stop as he's about to pass out. Selena tells him that's gonna happen because all they've had to eat for the past few days is candy and soda. Their rest is abruptly stopped when the scream of an infected is heard from the bottom of the staircase. The two start going up as fast as they can as we get our next track titled Tower Block. At the top of the stairs, Selena runs into a man in full riot gear who ushers them into his apartment and stays back to fend off the infected. Killing the infected, the man unlocks his apartment and lets Selena and Jim inside. The man's name is Frank, and he introduces the two to his daughter, Hannah. Frank is played by Brendan Gleeson, who is a very famous Irish actor and I guarantee many of you recognize. Despite the strange interior of the apartment, Frank is a very kind and welcoming man, and very happy to see other living people. Jim is finally able to shave and clean up his hair, and thank God, because that was getting really hard to look at. Jim and Selena get into an argument about the ethics of helping people, and whether or not it's okay to leave people behind if they're slowing you down. Jim says he wouldn't do it, and that's why we love you, Jim. The two do have a touching moment where Jim does thank Selena for saving his life, but she's pretty cold in response. But that is just kind of who she is. The next morning, Frank shows Jim the roof and their system for collecting rainwater, which isn't really working because it hasn't rained in 10 days. Frank admits that they're not going to be able to stay here. That night, the four stand on the balcony and listen to a radio broadcast sent by the military, preaching safety and telling survivors where to go for help. Frank tells them that he and Hannah have been hearing this message for a while now, but they could never go in case something happened to Frank. Hannah would be alone. But now that Jim and Selena are there, they could all go together. Frank and Selena argue about whether or not it's a good idea to follow the radio when the usually quiet Hannah pipes in and says that they could be killed no matter where they are, so they might as well be moving towards a goal. With their minds finally made up, we get our next track titled Taxi. Coming to a tunnel, the group has to make the decision of taking the quick route through the tunnel or going the long way by the river. Choosing the tunnel, they head into the pitch black. The tunnel is completely full of wrecked cars, but Frank doesn't care and drives the taxi up a ramp of trash and over all the wrecked cars to the other side. It's a nice and fun moment where the characters get a well-needed laugh in. Just as they get to the other side, one of the tires just straight up explodes, and they're gonna have to change it. Jim tells everyone to stop as he hears something coming down the tunnel. When out of nowhere, hundreds of rats start flooding past the car. The rats aren't the bad part. The bad part is what's following the rats. Seen as silhouettes of infected start entering the other end of the tunnel, we get our next track, titled The Tunnel. The four are able to fix a tire and get in just as the infected slam into the back of the car. Escaping the tunnel of death, the group deserves a break, so they stop at a grocery store, and we get our next track titled AM 180. This part is another reason why I love this movie. It provides no addition to the story or the plot, but helps flesh out the characters and make you feel more connected with them. And it's nice to have these moments of reprieve from what's usually a really depressing movie. I love when films do this, as it helps you get connected to the characters when you see them experience the full spectrum of emotions. Done with their shopping, we next see the group out in the country, having officially escaped London. They don't get too far though before they need to stop for gas. The adults go to check it out, and while Hannah stays with the car. While Frank and Selena siphon gas from the semi, Jim goes to the diner to look for cheeseburgers. He's got his priorities straight. In the back of the diner, Jim comes across a frankly tragic scene of a family who all died together. Just as Jim thinks it's safe, an infected kid jumps at him from behind, but luckily Jim is able to knock him to the ground and put him out of his misery. With the gas collected and Hannah almost running down her dad, the four set off again into the British countryside. The group finds a set of ruins to stop at for the night, and they all watch a group of now wild horses run free with our next track titled An Ending. Off on their own, Jim and Selena have a deep conversation on what's important in life now. And Selena actually apologizes for her cynical ways. As after seeing Frank and Hannah, she realizes that there's more than just staying alive. On top of this, we get our next track titled No More Films. That night, Hannah can't sleep. Jim jokes with Selena about it, and then she gives them all Valium. It turns out she was a registered chemist. The next morning, Jim wakes up alone. The fire is dead, and everyone is gone. We also get our next track titled Jim's Dream. Spoilers, my bad. Frank wakes Jim up, and luckily everyone's still there. Nobody left, and it was just a nightmare. Seriously, the next morning this time, Jim is woken up by the car horn, and everyone's already packed up and ready to go. Back on the road and heading still towards the radio broadcast, we get another dreamy and floaty track titled In Paradisum. As the car drifts down the road, the camera pans up and we see the entirety of Manchester in flames with no one to put it out. It's details like this that really hit me, man. Oh, it's like, they're so cool. Just as In Paradisum fades out, the group arrives at the blockade that the radio was talking about, but to Frank's horror, it's completely abandoned. Selena says that they should leave, but the always cheerful Frank lashes out at them, yelling, where else are they gonna go? Sitting down out of defeat, Frank sees a crow eating the corpse of an infected. He gets up to shoo the bird away when a single drop of blood from the infected falls and lands in his eye. Immediately knowing what's going to happen to him, Frank apologizes to his daughter and tells her how much he loves her, before telling her to get away, with the animalistic snarl of an infected breaking through more and more with each word. Realizing what happened, Selena yells to Jim that he's infected and that he needs to kill him. With this, we get our next track titled Frank's Death. The soldiers save Jim, Selena, and Hannah and take them back to their base, which is an Old English home called the Worsley House. Meeting them at the front door is Major Henry West, also known as the Ninth Doctor. I know all three of the Doctor Who fans loved that one. Beckoning them inside, West offers them food, beds, and warm showers, which the three gladly partake in before getting some rest. Selena is utterly defeated about Frank's death, but more importantly about what's going to happen to Hannah. She doesn't want Hannah to have to get used to living in a world like this. It's just not fair. Jim comforts her, and the two kiss. Obviously they are in love, but with the traumatizing day they've had, Selena can't take it and leaves. In the backyard, Jim sits with West, and he tells him how lucky the three of them are to have wound up here. He then takes Jim on a tour of the house. Everything from the lawn being strewn with landmines and tripwires, to the interior having a wood-fired furnace and a fully stocked kitchen. The final thing West shows Jim is Mailer, a soldier who was infected just a few days ago, who they're keeping chained up in the courtyard. Now, right off the bat, this is a bad idea, right? When a person or group has a captive zombie, it's always for a dumb reason, one way or another. However, these guys might actually be onto something, as the reason they're keeping him around is to see how long it takes for the infected to starve to death, also meaning how long they have to stay alive for. That night, everyone gathers for dinner, and the soldiers begin to argue about whether or not everything will ever go back to normal. This is when we meet Sergeant Farrell, the second in command, who West describes as very new age thinking. Dinner is interrupted as an explosion rocks the building. The infected are rushing the house and are hitting the landmines out front. The soldiers rush to arms and make rather quick work of the small horde, with most of them laughing about it and joking, showing how the soldiers are being dehumanized by their actions and their environment. That'll make sense soon, just stay with me. Coming back inside, one of the soldiers, Mitch, sees Selena and starts forcing himself on her. Jim tries to stop him but loses, when Farrell comes up from behind and takes Mitch to the ground. West arrives, breaking up the fight, and sends Mitch and the other soldiers outside. West takes Jim to have a drink and talk, where they discuss all the horrible things that you have to do to survive nowadays. That's when West drops the chilling line,
I promised them women.
explaining that his men had all but given up on life and were basically going to end themselves. West's solution to this was to bring them women. Fucked up. With this revelation, Jim runs to find Selena and Hannah and get them away from here. With this, we get our next track titled, I Promised Them Women. Just before they can escape, they're ambushed by the soldiers and Jim is knocked out. When he comes to, he sees Pharrell standing over him, defending him from the other soldiers, as he's the only one who sees any moral problem with what they're doing here. Outgunned and outmanned, Jim and Pharrell are thrown into a cell, awaiting to be executed. Next morning in their cell, Jim overhears Pharrell ranting to himself about how the rest of the world is fine, how the UK was the only place to completely fall to the infection, and the rest of the world was able to stop it. Despite this terrible situation, that's some amazing news to hear, right? Jim and Pharrell are forced out into the woods to a mass grave. One of the soldiers shoots Pharrell and in the process almost shoots Mitch, who tackles him to the ground, and they get into a fight. While they are distracted, Jim is able to slip away and over the fence of the property. Assuming he's good as dead, the soldiers leave him and head back to the house. Stumbling to the ground, Jim rolls over to see a plane flying overhead, with our next track titled, Then There Were Two. Back at the house, that sick bastard West orders his men to take Selena and Hannah upstairs and pick out something nice for them to wear. Man, this is just hard to say as a presenter, god damn. Upstairs, Selena forces a kiss on one of the soldiers, tricking him into letting her and Hannah be alone in the room. As soon as the two are alone, Selena dives for her bag and grabs the Valium, in order to drug up Hannah so she won't know what's happening. But before she can, the soldier rushes into the room, grabbing Selena and throwing the drugs. Just as he's about to hurt Selena, a siren can be heard from outside, and Selena immediately knows that it's Jim. Jim is back at the blockade and raising the air raid sirens to bait out the soldiers. And it works somehow. I honestly don't know why they went after him. Was it because the noise would bring more infected? I don't know really. West and his driver split up, and we get our next track titled The Search for Jim. Circling back to the Jeep, West finds the other soldier, Davis, dead in the front seat. Trying to escape, West finds that Jim sabotaged the Jeep, and he has to run into the woods as the infected start closing in. By the time Jim makes it back to the Worsley house, the sun is set. He goes to where Mailer is locked up and shoots the chains, letting him go in the compound. Inside the house, Selena and Hannah are being watched by guards at all times. We also find out that Hannah was able to take the pills that Selena tried to give her, and the girl is high as a kite. One of the soldiers turns to look out the window and is face to face with Mailer. He dives through the window, infecting him. Selena grabs Hannah and the two escape into the main area of the house where they're stopped by Mitchell. We see Jim looking in through a window in the kitchen to see the infected Mailer run in, while Jones, the soldier he was chasing, hides in a cupboard. Bedford, another soldier, arrives in the doorway ready to kill Mailer when the infected Clifton, the guy with the hat, ambushes him and the two rip Bedford apart. Mitchell escorts the two girls upstairs when Hannah runs off on her own, and we get a snippet of our next track titled Red Dresses. Jones, seeing the coast is clear, tries to make a run for it and literally runs into Jim, getting impaled by his bayonet. Somehow, Jim knows about a secret door that he's able to sneak into before the infected spot him. West finally arrives back at the house and comforts Jones in his last few moments. However, we quickly head back upstairs to see Hannah, as she wanted to find the picture of her and her family. She hears the infected coming and quickly hides behind the standing mirror in the corner, barely able to hold on until the infected hears something and leaves. Jim is tearing through the house looking for Selena and Hannah when he barricades himself in a room and finds Private Bell. Jim jumps out the window and onto the rooftop, leaving the soldier to his fate. When through a window, he sees Mitchell forcing Selena into a room. Jim climbs through the window and into the rafters of the tower they're in, and lands behind Mitchell with the crescendo of our next track, titled In the House in a Heartbeat. Real quick, I just want to say, if there's any song from a horror movie you should listen to, it's this one. This track encapsulates the fear and terror of this scene perfectly. And it's one of the greatest parts of the whole film. Jim brutally kills Mitchell, gouging out his eyeballs. when he turns around and is face to face with Selena holding her machete, not knowing whether or not Jim is infected. I mean, come on, can you blame her? Look at the guy. She goes to kill him but stops. And Jim says,
That was longer than a heartbeat.
the two embrace and Jim tells her that things aren't all fucked and things can be okay. While the two are kissing, Hannah breaks a wine bottle over Jim's head thinking he was biting Selena. With the howls of the infected echoing through the house, the three run outside and get to the car. Jim opens the back seat to see West there waiting for them. He shoots Jim in the stomach for killing all his men. Hannah throws the car in reverse and parks in the doorway of the house. Mailer slams into the back of the car, shattering the window, and drags West out, killing him. Selena pulls Jim into the car, and the three drive away, slamming through the locked gate, and we get a freeze frame. 28 days later. We get a dream sequence where it shows how Selena saved Jim's life, and then Jim wakes up. The three found a house out in the countryside and are now living peacefully. We get a flying shot as the military scouts the land for any survivors. We see infected laying in the streets, unable to move, emaciated because they're starving to death. Hannah runs inside and says it's coming. The three run outside with the makeshift flag they made, and we get our next track titled The End. The plane flies overhead, calling for a helicopter to come save our three survivors. They all share a moment of relief, and the credits roll. Wow, just what an impactful and amazing movie. This one has some of my favorite characters of all time. Danny Boyle, the director, did an amazing job fleshing out all of their characters and making us love them in just under 2 hours. I waited way too long to watch this one the first time I did, and if you're anything like me and you love zombie movies, please watch this movie. I promise you it is the best zombie movie of the 21st century. Well, without further ado, let's move on to the staff stars, where we here at The Sound of Fear tell you what we thought about the movie.
For 28 Days Later, our ratings are as follows.
We want to thank you guys all so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the movie and the amazing score that supports it. And as always, we'll see you guys next time.